All right. So I know that we covered this slide, but I just want to review. So we know that all matter, whether it's you, your desk, the air around us, water, all those things, all matter is made of molecules, these tiny little pieces of matter. Okay? And we know about how these molecules behave. One of the things that we know is that molecules will move from an area where they're tightly packed, an area of high concentration, to an area of low concentration, an area in which they have more space. And we talked about examples of perfume diffusing through a room. It starts off in a small concentrated area when it's first sprayed, but then diffuses to sort of throughout the room, and you could smell it across the room. When we put the drop of dye in the water, it starts off in a concentrated area, but then it sort of spreads out over a little period of time and eventually makes all of the water in the room. Okay? So those are examples of diffusion, of these molecules moving and spreading out. All right, what we're going to be talking about today and a lot next week is this concept that's related to diffusion, and it's called osmosis. So osmosis is just one type of diffusion. It's when water is moving across a membrane from a high to low concentration. So osmosis is still diffusion, but when it's water and when it's going across a membrane, we have this other word for it, osmosis. And we know that molecules on their own, without any energy being added, will always move from high to low concentration, if they can. They move toward the lower concentration. So if we think about an example, I'm going to put this up for a minute. We actually have this apparatus. Okay? It's a U-tube. And anyway, it really is. It's this U-shaped tube of plastic. It comes in two pieces. You don't like my joke? I thought it was really good. Anyway, so we have this U-shaped tube, and it comes in two pieces. Okay, it's split down the middle here. And what you can do is you could actually put this piece of plastic between these two membranes that separates them. And what you put here is a semipermeable membrane. So let me walk you through this example. Let's say that these purple circles represent starch molecules. Okay, starch is actually a large molecule. All right, so we have a bunch of starch molecules here. And the rest of this is just water. So we filled up on one side of this tube with a starch solution. Has some starch, has some water. And we put a starch solution here as well. But what can you tell me about the concentrations of starch on this side versus this side? Jaden?
There's more starch levels.
Yeah, how would we say it just slightly differently, Charmy?
There's a high concentration.
Yeah, there's a higher concentration of starch on this side. And there's a lower concentration of starch on this side. All right, that makes sense. You can see that, right? All right, now, so what would the starch want to do? We've talked about diffusion and what molecules, they don't really think, they don't want to do anything, but what would the starch do here, Gianna?
They would move to the other side.
Yeah, want to equal out the concentration. So some of this starch probably would want to end up here. But there's a problem. And the problem is here with this membrane that we put there. Because that membrane is semi-permeable. It's got holes in it, but these starch molecules are too large. They can't actually get through. So no starch can get from this side to this side or vice versa. So the starch is basically stuck. Even though in diffusion it would want to go from high to low concentration, it can't. All right, well, sorry, starch, you're stuck there. But let's think about the water now. Tell me about the concentration of water on this side versus this side. Michael?
On that side it's less.
Yeah, there's more starch, so that means a lower concentration of water. And what's it mean for this side? Lonnie? Yeah, there's a high concentration of water over here. All right, so we know, what would the water like to do? What do we know about how molecules move, Karina? What would the water want to do here?
Move around.
Yeah, want to move from where to where?
From that to there to that one.
Yeah, has a high concentration on this side, a lower concentration here, so the water would like to go through. And guess what? Water is a very small molecule. It is able to get through this membrane. So what do you think this is going to look like after 15 or 20 minutes? If water is going over there. Grace?
There would be a higher concentration of the starch molecules on the last side.
Yeah, it would equal out. What would happen to the levels of water? Would they change?
Yeah.
Zach, how would they change?
The one on the right would go higher because there's more water.
Yeah, water's going to this side, and so yeah, it would go higher.
Are you recording?
So after this experiment's over, after letting it sit for, 15 or 20 minutes, it would look like this. Now again, when you look at sort of the distribution of starch, it's about equal now. The concentration of water is about equal, but this side would be higher than this side. Okay? So again, that would be an example of osmosis. Remember, our definition of osmosis is when water passes through a semipermeable membrane, okay? When water diffuses through a semipermeable membrane. And that's what it did. It went from a higher concentration to a lower concentration through that membrane. Tim?
What would the particles, or like the what are they called?
Starch?
No. Yeah, but like or the molecules, what would they do? Like if there wasn't, if it was a solid, non-permeable.
Just like a barrier?
Yeah.
Then nothing would move. So the water couldn't get through, the starch couldn't get through, it would stay the same.
Would the molecules like do anything different?
No, they'd just be bouncing around in here. They wouldn't do anything different. All right. Now, osmosis becomes very important to our own health even. In fact, you can use osmosis to tell lots of things. Why you put your contacts in saline solution instead of just water. Why you get thirsty after you drink salty foods. Why salt kills a slug. Why gargling with salt water helps your sore throat feel better. Why we spray fruits and vegetables with fresh water. Why when you're dehydrated they don't give you pure water. All of these different things. Why you shouldn't drink seawater. If you're stranded at sea and you're dying of dehydration, you should not drink seawater. All of those things can all be explained based on just this simple principle of osmosis. So let's look at another example here. What we have is some red blood cells. That's what these pictures are. And they were placed in beakers of various solutions. Okay? Now, cells themselves, I don't know, they're about, let's say 95% water. A cell is mostly just water. There's other stuff in there, but it's mostly water. Let's say it's 95% water. Okay? This first beaker shows if you have these cells and they're 95% water, and then you put them in a liquid that's also 95% water, what do you think would happen? If they're both 95% water. Jaden?
Equal concentrations?
Yeah, so would the water move into the cell or out of the cell? No, they're equal concentrations, so diffusion is not really a factor. Because there's no high, no low concentration, these cells basically, they stay about the same. And that's what's being shown here. Now in beaker B, we've taken these same cells, but now they were placed in a solution that was very high in salt, a very high salt water concentration. Let's say it was 90% water, 10% salt. So now there's a lower concentration of water in this beaker. So if the cell's 95% water, the liquid is 90% water, what's going to happen? If the cell's 95% water, the liquid is 90% water. Where is there a higher concentration of water? Michael? In the cell. There's a lower concentration in the liquid. So which way would the water move? Michael?
The other way.
Yeah. Jaden? Don't give me a direction, but from where to where? Jeremy?
From the cell to the beaker.
Yeah, from the cell where there's a higher concentration out into that liquid in the beaker. And what happens to the cell?
It glows, or it
Kind of shrivels up. Because it's like a water balloon that lost a bunch of its water and just kind of deflates. Or like a beach ball and you let some of the air out, kind of shrinks because it lost that water. These cells have become dehydrated. These are actual pictures of cells that have done that. All right, and the last one you could probably guess is C. Now in C, we put it in a beaker that's just 100% water. So the liquid is 100% water. The cell is 95% water. What's going to happen? Tim?
The water's going to seep into the cell and make the cell bigger.
Yeah, in fact, it can even cause the cells to burst. It's called plasmolysis. The cells, if they're in pure water, you could see they've swollen up. And if they swell too much, the cells can burst open. Okay? So, this can explain medically, if I run the Boilermaker every year. And so if you ever have done any athletic events, you're supposed to be hydrated and drink well. Well, each year there's people that kind of pass out and become dehydrated and they take them to the medical tent. And do you know how they treat them? When somebody has bad dehydration, they don't give them 10 cups of water to drink. Kaylee, you know what they do?
Don't they put an IV in their arm?
Yeah, they give them an IV. So an IV is a bag of fluid with a tube that goes to a tiny needle that they put in one of your veins. So they're putting liquid directly into a person's veins. But they don't give them just pure water. Okay? Do you know why not? Zoe? Caitlin?
so then the cells don't grow.
Yeah. If they gave them pure water into their veins, they would be in this situation. And their blood cells would absorb that water because of osmosis, and they could burst. It could be very dangerous. Okay, so they don't give them. What do you think they do give them? Zach?
Salt water?
Yeah, they give them salt water. We have a name for this kind of salt water.
Glucose?
No. Sometimes there's glucose in the water if they need that carbohydrates too, but something else. Some of you may be familiar with it and may use it every single morning and evening. You know, Tim?
Saline solution?
Yes, saline solution. Does anybody use saline solution for the contacts?
I use it for my nose.
Okay, do you ever get it in your, did you ever put it in your eye and then it drips down and it gets in your mouth?
Yeah.
What's it taste like?
Salt.
Slightly salty. And that it is. It's a mixture of salt and water, really. And it's balanced so that it perfectly matches the water content of your cells. So if they give you the saline solution in your veins, it doesn't cause your blood cells to enlarge or shrink. It's perfectly balanced, but you're still adding it to your hydration level in your body. You put it in your contacts case because your contacts, they're mainly water and plastic. But again, for the same reason, if you put your contacts in just tap water, they're going to be in this situation. Water is going to go into your contact lens, causing it to swell up and causing the shape to change. So you don't put them in pure water, you put them in a balanced saline solution. Charmy?
But if they put salt water in your veins, won't something like B happen?
No, because it's exactly balanced. to be, if your cells are 95% water, what they give you in saline is 95% water. If they gave you something too salty, and this is why drinking salt water is dangerous. Because when you drink salt water, you're in this situation. The water you drank is very salty, and so water from all the cells in your body leaves your cells and goes into that seawater. So it actually dehydrates all of your cells more quickly. Michael?
What happens when your cells burst to your body?
They can't function anymore, so your cells, your body can't get oxygen because those red blood cells are bursting. You could get very sick. You could die from it. Caitlin?
Why do the B
Yep.
the B cells look totally different from the A?
Because when a cell shrivels up like that and loses its water, if you think like a beach ball, but you let all the air out, it's like just all bumpy and stuff because it's not sort of fully enlarged to its normal size. Zach?
How come if someone's stranded in the middle of the ocean, how come they don't drink salt water?
That's what I was just explaining. Because as you get that salt water in, your cells have a higher concentration of water than the seawater you drink. And so water will leave your cells and go into the seawater. And you become dehydrated more quickly. Because your cells are actually losing more water.
But how come they give you salt water when, like you said, at the boiler rate?
Because it's balanced. So, it's the right concentration of salt and water. Seawater has too much salt. If seawater was balanced, like saline solution, then you could drink it. Okay?
Why do they give us pure water? Like, why can't we drink pure water, but
Can't get it
in our veins?
because when you drink pure water and it goes into your it's balanced and your body regulates how much water there is. If you're putting it directly in your veins, there's not that regulation. All right, we're going to move on. Good job there. So molecules diffuse at different rates depending on what they're in. So in a solid molecule, so let's talk about heat first. When you heat up a substance, what's happening to the molecules that make up that substance? You heat it up. Logan, yeah, was your hand up? I couldn't quite tell, no? Jackie? Not so much close together. Karina? No? We're talking about molecules like in metal or in air or in water. Kayla?
They spread out.
They spread out and they start moving. You're adding energy faster.
Oh.
When you add heat, molecules vibrate and move faster. So in a liquid, molecules are vibrating faster. In gas, they're moving the fastest. Diffusion happens most quickly in a gas. And we can increase how quickly diffusion takes place by heating up the molecules. Molecules will diffuse faster if they're in a warm substance versus a cold substance. The other factor that can increase, actually, let me show you this. So if I show you here an example, in a second. Now I'm going to do the dye diffusing through the water again, but I just want to add a little twist here. Hot water heater in this tank must be so far away that you ever get the water out.
That's the same thing in my bathroom.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It comes from like all the way down to the other end of the floor. All right, let me move on here for a minute while I'm waiting. The other thing that can increase how quickly molecules diffuse is the surface area that they are moving through. This is another factor that's important in the human body, the surface area. Are you done? No.
I go to
I
bed.
think it's getting worse.
What are you trying to do?
This is
I
your
need some warm water.
Can I do it for you?
No, it's all right.
Can I go
All right, so let's talk about surface area first. Diffusion is very important for our bodies, and we need to absorb things into our body all the time. Two important areas for that are in our lungs and in our intestine. What do we need to absorb in our lungs?
Oxygen.
Oxygen. What do we absorb in our intestines? Nutrients. And both of those things, oxygen and nutrients, go into our bodies because of diffusion. When we breathe in air into our lungs and inflate our lungs, the air we breathe in has a high concentration of oxygen. The blood around our lungs has a lower concentration of oxygen. So what does the oxygen want to do? From where to where? High to low. Where was our high concentration?
Coming in.
In the air you breathed in,
And then it comes out.
and then it goes into your blood because of diffusion. Same thing in our intestine. When you eat a slice of pizza and the bread part gets broken down into carbohydrates, sugars. Those sugars are in your intestine now, or they're getting there. There's a high concentration of sugars in your intestine, a lower concentration in your blood. And so those sugar molecules diffuse into your blood because of diffusion. Now, the inside of our small intestine, it's not like a hollow tube. It's not like a hose that's nice and smooth on the inside, winding around. The inside of the small intestine actually has all these bumps and ridges. They're called villi. If our intestine were just smooth on the inside, the surface area would be about the surface of your desk.
Ew.
But because of all these bumps and ridges, it's actually about 2 basketball courts is the surface area of one person's intestines. So it has all of that extra area for molecules to diffuse into your body.
How do we fit it in one body?
Because it's all wound up. You know, it's all wound up inside of that tube. The same is true of our lungs. When your lungs are not like 2 balloons, they're actually made of all these little tiny clusters. They look like clusters of grapes. And that gives us a very large surface area. Our lungs are about 1 basketball court,
So,
the surface area that we can absorb oxygen through.
one of our small intestines, if we unwove it, equals 2 basketball courts.
If you unwound it and you spread it all out, you took away all those bumps and ridges and like flattened them out, then it would be 2 basketball
So
courts.
you need a width.
Yeah, the width and the length. It would cover the whole 2 whole basketball
Can I go to
courts
bed?
quickly.
Jack, you dropped your dollar bill.
All right. So let me set this up, then I'll explain our last slide today.
Okay, so,
So I have here 2 beakers of water.
No.
And again, I'm going to put a drop of that food coloring in this. One of these containers has warm water. One has cold water. After letting it sit for a few minutes, you should be able to tell which is which. All right, so if we look at these, you could tell already. This will make sure, yeah. Which is the warm water, Kayla? Yes, the one on the left. How did you know?
because it spread out faster.
Yeah, it diffuses. It's basically all diffused throughout that water already, while the one that was colder water, it's taking a little more time. Warm molecules, diffusion happens quicker. All right, last slide. Yeah, Caitlin?
I think they use yesterday like that.
Yep. It was just sort of room temperature water. All right, our last thing to talk about today is everything we've talked about so far. Diffusion and osmosis are types of what we call passive transport. Passive transport is when molecules move and they don't need any energy. They just do it on their own. Remember I said it's like the ball rolling down the hill? You don't have to push the ball. You don't have to add any energy. It just does it. It goes from high on the hill to low on the hill. and diffusion osmosis are like that. I don't have to force those molecules to spread out, they just do it on their own. But there is another type of movement of molecules. It's called active transport. You want to take a guess as to what it means? Bonnie? Yes, it does need energy. And it moves molecules in which direction?
Low to high.
Yeah, from low to high. It's like getting that ball from low on the hill to high on the hill. What would you have to do? You have to push it. You have to put some energy in. And so sometimes cells need to move things the opposite way, from low to high. If they're going to do that, they have to use up some energy to do that. And often it involves these special types of proteins that move the molecules from a low concentration to a higher concentration. You know, if we think about my example the other day, I said if I took every 7th grader and forced them in this room, closed the doors, that would be what kind of concentration?
High
A high concentration of students in this room. Now, is a 9th grader walking by the hallway going to come into this room filled with 7th graders?
No.
Oh, probably not. I know 9th graders. They wouldn't come in here filled with 7th graders. So they would not. But if I went to this hallway and I found a 9th grader, okay, I could grab them and I could exert a little bit of energy and I could force them into this room. I can make them go from a low concentration to a high concentration. They wouldn't do that on their own. So I could force them in here.
Yay!
It would take me a tiny amount of energy to do that.